What everybody wants to talk about is supply chain. So we're going to have Brad Alexander and Robb Mackie and Rick Hoskins come up, and the four of us are going to talk about that. So we're really excited.
Sit next to the big guy. Nice chairs. They are kind of sit on the edge.
These are nice chairs.
They are. They're pretty comfy. That's what Dana orange.
Nobody can take a nap after staying up too late. So, so I think I'm going to kick this off. Again, a super hot topic. And, you know, as I've been talking to members over the last couple of weeks, it's so interesting. I think the one word I hear is, it's just so unexpected. You know, I have something that comes all the time and I order it, and I've been doing that for years. And then one little part of that is sourced somewhere else. It's not available, and now I can't get an ingredient, I can't get a motor, I can't get a control, I can't get something that was just easy before. So first question is, how important is transparency right now, you know, with this relationship between supplier and bakers?
Critical. It really is. And what we're trying to do also is at Flowers is do a better job communicating internally with supply chain, with purchasing, innovation, and so forth. Because if we have some new project coming on board, we got to make sure that our suppliers understand our needs, right? A good example, and we didn't do the job we should have, to be honest, was during the pandemic. Like a lot of bakers, we streamlined our product mix because we were trying to put the maximum amount of product out in the marketplace. Well, when we did that, it really put a strain on bag suppliers. You know, all of a sudden we had some products that might go up 40, 50, 60%. And you know, the long lead times that we have now are more than ever. And we didn't do a good job of communicating with our suppliers on the ingredients for those products. We're going to focus on these. We have a big promotion. We have something going on. So we've committed our team to make sure that our purchasing group is talking to our suppliers to make sure that we give them as much lead time as possible. And likewise, our suppliers, we're challenging them to talk to us about what are their needs, what's changing, where are their pain points. In my career, I've been with Flowers 40 years, and the last 6 or 8 months have been the craziest on supply chain. We have some cake plants, for example, that we're getting ingredients 5 minutes before the shift starts. Or it's late, so we're making that shift say, well, you were going to make X, but now we're going to make Y, because the ingredients or the packaging or the cardboard or something's not there. And then to make it even more complicated, we have a big grocery store chain that is starting to fine people for out of stocks. So, you know, the communications between all of us is so critical. And to everyone out here, I do know lots of you, but I've met a lot of new people, and I want to thank you for inviting us to BEMA. It's been great. Robert Benton's been coming for a long time, but he never would let me come here. So now I know why. It's such a good event. He didn't want to share it. But I do appreciate it. But all I can say is if we're not doing something, please reach out to me personally if I can help in any way to help that communications so that we can help each other, because we need each other. Thank you, Kerwin.
Hey, Brad, can I just jump in on
Sure.
this? So we've started to hear that the just-in-time supply chain model in the baking industry may need to be rethought. Do you have any thoughts on that? In the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's a tough one, Rob. You know, when we think about, you know, we're trying to think of everything we can do. If you think about our industry, it's tough. Our bakeries are hot. We're expecting people to work on weekends. We're expecting them to work on holidays. And, you know, what we've got to do really is think through how can we how can we make sure that the workforce of the future is going to want to work for us? And so some of the things that we're trying to do, one is do a better job onboarding, making sure the people that come on board, we don't just throw them to the fire and leave them alone. So sort of a mentoring program, following up, especially that first week or two. How are you doing and so forth. And then also, showing them a career path. If I start here and trying to, a lot of our plant managers started on the floor, right? And showing them that they can go, if you start here, over time you can get to, you can run this thing. So pretty challenging.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just put in a little bit of context. Most of the guys in the room here and gals, this isn't going to come as much of a surprise, but just to kind of hear it sometimes really puts it to a whole new level. A 4x8 sheet of 7-gauge stainless steel on December 21st, 2020, it was $550. Now it's $1,300. A 3-inch by 6-inch by 240-inch stainless steel tubing on December 7th, 2020 was $723. It's now $1,300. 4-inch by 12-foot round aluminum bar, on February 4th, 2020, $400, now $700. Plastics up 30%. A 2x4, 16 feet long on August 21st, 2020, it was $7. It's now $22. Lead times, stock parts, HMIs that are, on the shelf can be 12 weeks right now. Custom parts can be twice that. Raw material, usually same day. The minimum amount of time we're going to get it is 3 to 5 days, sometimes up to 2 weeks. Obviously, this results for us in price increases on equipment, and lead times that were once 14 weeks are now 28 weeks. You addressed kind of how you guys are handling your supplier situations. I've been amazed at how our customers have been able to accept, is the best word, new pricing structures really at the last minute. These fluctuations are in a matter of months, sometimes days. We started putting in our proposals surcharge caveats. If raw material goes up a certain percentage, we can pass that on to our customers. Somehow the customers are accepting of this, and also the lead time issue. One question I have in terms of internally and planning, as you guys are sitting around the table and you're looking at these projects, and I know you try to give us forewarning on what your guys' expectations are, but many times the answer is there's nothing we can do about it. It's a 32-week lead time for something that you guys are expecting to be 16 weeks. So internally, how are you guys kind of dealing with that?
Well, it's a good question. I think the important thing is that we all talk, we all communicate, because we understand how crazy it is right now. We understand there is inflation going on. We need to be realistic. Now, our purchasing group's going to tell you that we want those prices that you mentioned earlier, those, but we need each other, and we need our suppliers to be successful, or they're going to go under, right? That's not going to help anyone. The long lead times are really challenging. What we have to do internally is do a better job, realizing this is the new norm now, these long lead times. We have to plan better. And we need to plan, instead of maybe 1 and 2 year capital, maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4 year capital. I know some companies have 5 year and everything. We just have never really done that on paper. And I think, if we can get with, our key suppliers, and they know what our plans are over time, they can schedule things, and they can hopefully cut out waste in their system. I know you've got ebb and flows, or every vendor that we use has got busy times and slack times. And if they can use some of those slack times for another project of ours that we need maybe a little bit down the road, they can, cut out that slow time and be more efficient, which helps all of us, right? It helps. You don't have all overtime at the facility. And then also, it can help on planning. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to plan longer lead times, because I think it's here to stay for a while.
Yeah. So I guess you want to?
Well, I was just going to say, and Brad can speak to this as well. We heard at the board meeting, the ABA board meeting, one baker, I won't name who it was, they tracked 50 input costs, 49 of the
49 were
50 are up substantially. So my message to you is don't assume the bakers don't understand, because they're going through the exact same conversation with their customers up the supply chain. So
Yeah. So we want to put you on the hot seat a little bit, Rob.
Here it comes.
You know, normally we don't really want to hear much about what DC is doing because it's usually nothing. But in this particular case, you know, all of us sit around asking, you know, what the heck's going on, and you know, what is Washington going to do about it? So regarding policy and on these supply chain issues, you know, can you chime in on what DC is doing?
yeah, no, we've been, and you typically see in the first year of a new administration, you see a lot of activity. Notice I didn't say results, but we see a lot of activity, and this administration is no different. You know, clearly they had to sort of pick up the baton, you know, from the Trump administration on COVID, and I would say, my opinion, by and large, they've done a pretty good job of continuing that. What nobody anticipated was just the incredible logistics issues, the supply chain issues, the workforce issues. Every week, it's like 3 new things that are coming at it. So the administration has, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous about it. The administration has created this new task force to look at supply chain issues, and like everything coming out of this administration, it has a very large price tag, and I just wonder, you know, what are they going to do with $4 billion, you know, into the supply chain, particularly the ag supply chain. But there are some things that we're clearly focused in on. There's nothing we can do about the weather. You know, we can't force farmers to plant more wheat and soybeans and all of those kinds of things. But there are some policies that can help. One of the big issues is soybean oil. And it's one of those things where we just don't have enough soybeans in the supply, and we could run out. And so, you know, we're helping the bakers find other sources and getting some labeling flexibility from FDA. We were able to get that during the COVID pandemic. We're going to extend that. But the other thing is, just to be honest with you, we're competing with the clean fuel, particularly the second generation clean diesel, is putting a lot of strain, and this administration is putting, pardon the expression, the pedal to the floor on that. So we've gone to EPA and we've gone to USDA and asked them to put a pause, you know, let the supply chain start to work itself out, let the refiners of the sort of second generation edible oils come online. They've all announced the increased capacity, but you know, that takes time. So we're on that. One of the things that we were very successful during COVID was getting the Department of Transportation to allow more flexibility for drivers to be on the road a little longer, to service customers a little longer. So we've asked this administration to extend that, you know, under sort of that emergency declaration. Again, none of these is going to be the silver bullet, Rick, just to be honest about it. But if we can, you know, have some layered effect, you know, we're working very closely with our wheat supply chain, you know, in terms of the quality of issues. The other big issue is, we have a challenge unwinding. It's like we took the entire global supply chain and tied it in knots, you know, and I know you guys have been tracking the container issue. Well, you know, I just can't believe I'm going to say this again. You know, we actually have a gluten shortage in this country, and we had our virtual fly-in last week, and we were talking to about a dozen senators, and they were just aghast, you know, whoever thought we would have. But part of it is we can't unload containers, you know, as they're coming into the ports. Now, we think that's getting better. And part of it is the COVID restrictions. You know, just to be honest about it, you know, it takes longer to do anything because of the COVID restrictions. We're starting to see those eased. So it's just going to be a variety of these different approaches. One of the things that we are concerned about, kind of on a more negative basis, though, is particularly as Brad talked about the workforce issues. This administration has a very aggressive workforce agenda. There's something called the PRO Act, which, you know, sounds pretty innocuous, but basically it eliminates state right to work. It eliminates independent contractor. Remember the old card check issue that we've talked about many times here in the past? That comes back, and those are just the highlights, if you will. Those are all going to make this situation so much worse, and so we're calling them out on it. And right now, as long as the filibuster remains in the Senate, we're going to be okay. There's 3 Democrats that have really been solid on us. But, you know, as we keep going, you know, we keep hitting the wall, and the Biden administration has changed its position. If the filibuster goes away, Katie, bar the door. because then you need 51 votes. If you need 60, it keeps the really, really bad stuff from happening. And what's interesting is, the infrastructure package everybody's talking about, and pick your poison. You want the 6 trillion or the 4 trillion or the 2 trillion. But what people, focus on the money, and we all know we need to fix our roads and bridges. But it's loaded up. The PRO Act has been embedded into the Biden administrations, and politically they owe the unions big time. And so they're going to have to give them something politically. And so we're terrified that it would be the PRO Act, but they've got to get rid of the filibuster first. So as long as we can hold the filibuster, I think we can keep the worst case scenario from happening, Rick. Probably more information than you wanted.
So you're saying nothing's going to happen?
That's our hope. We don't want bad things to happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
We talked a little bit about this through the Intel, all this increased demand, what we're seeing on the retail channel and other channels. And then when I talked to the members, they're saying, best year we ever had, we can't keep up, those deals. Is this sustainable? I think that the bakers are seeing that whatever risk they had with people, how can we automate that out? Right. We're not trying to automate out people. We're just automate out because we don't have people. It's not, so you just can't find people to do those jobs. So you're trying to automate what you can. So there's some demand there. To talk a little bit about, just that whole demand side, and is it sustainable?
Yeah, and I thought the earlier conversation was really telling. Is sort of intuitively you would say, and people don't realize, before the pandemic, 52% of meals were consumed out of the home, and literally overnight that shifted completely. And so you talk about supply chain, that's a whole other conversation. But we've been pleasantly surprised. We had another webinar with Todd Hale, and there's so many variables going on, but I expect the retail will be strong. Now, I don't know compared to 2020 whether we're going to see that kind of continued growth. The big question is, how does this industry build on that momentum? And as you know, at our ABA convention, that was sort of the central theme, which is how did this industry build on that? We are seeing some really bright signs on the food service side, so that's good. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see, do they kind of take share from each other, or are we going to settle in at a new higher norm? And it's strange things like, we fully expect, some of the big high-tech firms have said, we're going to be virtual office from now forward, or some flexible combination. And, I know a lot of the baking industry folks that may never have considered doing, remote work, or now it's going to be part of their deal. Well, what that means is if somebody's working from home for 2 days, they're probably making a sandwich. Sandwiches are huge right now, so that could continue, but the challenge is they're not going out to lunch. They're not going to the sub shop, 2 days a week. And, Rabobank is tracking this very closely, and that's going to have an impact. And so I don't have the answer. Brad may have a lot more insight, but hopefully it's going to end up at a higher level.
Yeah, I think Robb's correct. I think there's going to be a new norm. I think the retail channel for the foreseeable future is going to be above 2019. I'm not sure we're going to be where 2020 was. We had such a ramp up, but and just like Robb said, even we at Flowers are looking at, and we realize that during the pandemic, there's certain jobs that can be done pretty effectively from home. And there are certain jobs that maybe a few days a week they come into the office and so forth. So we're wrestling with that. But as consumers are at home, they are eating toast, they are eating bagels, they're eating English muffins for breakfast, and then they're having sandwiches for lunch. So I do think that the retail will be strong the rest of this year, above 2019, not quite as strong as 2020. We are seeing food service back. But I also seeing big challenges with food service people just trying to find people, trying to find employees. My wife went to a Wendy's the other day, and the lady said, "Please bear with me. I am the only employee in the whole restaurant." She was taking the order, she was cooking, she was ringing it up, and my wife said, "Here's $20, I'm leaving." she felt so sorry for her.
Right.
Can you imagine? We also heard today that even here, I think there are 300 or 400 employees short here. So, when the restaurant business went down and they had to lay off people and let people go, they're having a hard time finding them back. Right. And I've seen shorter hours at restaurants, and I've seen restaurants just close.
Right. We're certainly seeing, I was at Love Field the other day in the middle of the week, and Chick-fil-A wasn't open. In the afternoon, you're like, our Starbucks in Kansas City at KCI, the morning I left, or the afternoon I left, wasn't open. You're like, how can a Starbucks not be open at 5 in the afternoon? But I think they're going to close them on days and not. The other thing I think, and I don't know what the audience thinks and the bakers and you, there just seems to be. We talked a little bit about ROI. I think there's this openness to invest in your plants more than ever before.
Well, Robert's really good at spending, so. But he's also, I think we're going to talk a little bit more on it later, hopefully, but for us, it's really going to be looking at those ROIs, looking at, what can we do to take out manpower? How do we automate more effectively? What can we do? We need your all's ideas. Something that maybe didn't work before because of the cost might make more sense, right?
Well, it begs the question on the workforce issues, and you guys have the same workforce issues that everybody has today. How are you guys, with respect to workforce in general, how are you guys approaching that, and where do you see within the workforce the biggest issues?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. It's a huge challenge for us right now. We have 46 bakeries in the U.S., and it's area by area. There's some areas that are not that bad right now, but we have some areas that are extremely challenging.
So geographic or
yes.
In the plant? Okay.
Seems to be geographic, and it seems to be for us in larger cities, we have more challenges. We're in a lot of small towns with some facilities, and we're pretty important in that community, and we seem to do better there. Not always, but we seem to attract and retain people better. We are trying to think of everything we can, from schedules to how can we make it cooler in the plants? How can we onboard better? How can we train them better? How can we give them positive feedback? How can we show them a career path? Everything. Make sure that our pay is fair, But we're going to have to really, maybe do more part-time. There are a lot of people that don't want to work 40 or 50 hours a week. They're like, I just want to work 2 days a week. Well, traditionally, we haven't done a lot of that, but maybe we need to. Maybe we need to think about it, because what's happening right now for us is, with demand up and not a lot of employees, we're penalizing our good employees, and we're making them work a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
And they like overtime the first few weeks, but after a while, they're like, I want to have some work-life balance. I want to have some time with my family. Money's not as important. And the new generation, we've got to think differently. And it's weird to be up here and say I'm one of the old timers, but when I started in the industry, I wanted as much time, overtime, everything, work. I wanted to make money. It's different now. It's different with my kids now. And I've been with the same company 40 years, and people switch. We've had some people in our company leave, and because of they've gotten some government additional money, and we said, well, why? And they go, well, we know we can find a job 6 months later if we want to go back. So it's very different.
Yeah.
It's scary.
So we're seeing, on the automation side, a lot of projects that previously didn't quite make the financial hurdles are back on the front burner and being executed on. The project finance models seem to be changing a bit with respect to, it used to be straight labor cost calculations, taking X number of people off a line, getting a certain payback, or whatever the internal rate of returns that you guys are working off of. And a lot of these companies are basically saying, I can't even find the employees. So we were talking to a baker the other night. He's 150 people short. They're running their process line, shutting the process line down, moving all the people to the packaging line. So it's kind of gotten to a point for a lot of companies where they're throwing the old project finance calculations out the window and saying, I don't care if it's a 2-year payback or whatever the internal rate of return is, and they're spending money on automation. Are you guys, that's probably not at the level
Not
of what you guys are
exactly
doing?
that. We do have a CFO that holds us pretty accountable for our capital,
Yeah.
but you have to be realistic with your capital numbers. I mean, if you're using some number for a calculation for ROI, but now you think about, well, they're really, all those people are on overtime most of the time, so that hourly rate's different. Healthcare costs, unfortunately, seem to go up every year. Labor costs go up every year, if you can find people. So we definitely are looking at, anything that we can improve quality. Sustainability is critical. Anything that's, sustainability, quality, and then also people, reduction of people. And what's challenging is when you have bakeries that are flexible to do different things, that's great, but they're not generally highly automated, right?
Right.
So we have to think through, what do we want to be when we grow up? What do we want to be good at? Where can we win? And then make sure that our lines are in the right place. We always say, put the pans where the people are, put the bakeries where they are, because we know costs on transportation and fuel keep going up. So reduce that as much as possible. But automation is really, really important. And I think for the upcoming IBIE convention, which we're all excited about, I think that's going to be a key thing that all of our team's looking at.
I would say I never, ever would have thought. I talk to bakers every day, and there are bakers that are turning away business, new business, or expanded business, either because they can't find employees, to add a shift or a partial shift, or, and I think this is smart, is they're not willing to overstress their current employee base by making them, a more added overtime or another shift. And again, in 26 years, I've never heard anybody a baker turning away business ever. And so, the whole dynamic, from top to bottom is changing. So,
Yeah.
Brad just mentioned it, but we are sort of excited about this show called IBIE, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Rob, or just how we think that the everything's kind of aligning for that to be a really positive show. So.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to give a shout out to EBA. Kerwin and I have developed a great relationship with the owners and the managers of the EBA show, and with a lot of guidance from our IBIE committee, we've been in close contact, and I think it goes without saying they did a huge solid to us at IBIE, and it was a critical factor in making the decision to move their show to 23, and I think it's important that everybody in the room understand that. The good news, I guess, from our perspective is now IBIE next fall will be the first significant global baking show. And, when we were coming out of 19, had a great show, we were working with Dennis and the team, kind of putting the pedal to the floor on some things. And then obviously COVID hit and we're like, well, we're taking the foot off the accelerator. Now I think we're going to go to about 3/4 because we're expecting, just like this event, and I think as other events come on, we're expecting IBIE to be huge. I do think some of the things that Brad talked about are going to be efficiency of operation, whether it's sanitation, whether it's just moving, bulk ingredients. Everything inside the plant, I think, is under review. And so I think, the challenge, to this group and others is how can you make, the process so much more efficient, but then also flexible? How do you do quicker changeovers so that you can do faster, quicker, changeover? But then you talked a lot about sustainability, Brad. You may want to talk a little bit. It's been a big initiative for Flowers.
It has. We have a great team working on it. I think it's, you're hearing more and more in the news. It's also very important to our new employees. They want to know what your sustainability plan is, and that's something that, kind of caught us by surprise because the new generation wants to know the cause or why should I work for this company? And if they don't believe in what you're trying to do, if they don't believe in your mission and your vision and what you stand for, they'll find somebody else because there is that shortage. But yeah, we're excited about IBIE. We always send a lot of people from Flowers. Our challenge is, we have so many people that want to go and we try to figure out what's the right number. It's great support from all the vendors out here to see the latest and greatest and visually see it. So it's super great, and we're excited about it. I think it's going to be a great year.
I think that, is there any questions that anyone has for the group? Did somebody?
Oh, Josh.
You were talking about the filibuster kind of putting a brake on things, but to what degree is there a risk that the corporate tax rate might be elevated through reconciliation?
Yeah.
And if that were to happen, I guess I'd ask Brad, what might that mean for capital expenditures for baking?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Josh. And you talked about loading things up. The bipartisan compromise on infrastructure, which is actually an infrastructure bill. It's going to roads and bridges, broadband, some stuff like that with all the extraneous materials. One of the pay-fors is increasing the corporate tax rate up to 25%. It's currently at 21%. I'm not an economist, but I think, when you make the cost of capital that much higher, you're going to reduce the amount that you have to spend. But Brad could probably talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I've heard so many numbers out there. I don't think they're going to get where the number they're shouting now, but I think there will be an increase in corporate taxes. Part of it because we're spending a tremendous amount of money right now. You think about $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. I can't even fathom what $1 trillion is. But will it affect our capital? I think it is a component. You have, like everybody, you have X number of dollars. We look at share repurchases, we look at acquisitions, we look at internal programs that we have capital investments. So it's all part of what do you have to work with and what's left after you run your business. But we ramped up our capital expenditures this year. We have a big, I don't know if everybody else does, we have a big ERP upgrade with SAP HANA 4, which is going to be a fun project to do, which will take a little while. But I think, Josh, I don't think it'll tremendously affect it unless the tax, amount goes up, the percentage goes way up. Then I think we'd have to relook everything.
The other element, as we saw in the last tax package, is the depreciation schedule, enormously helpful. Some of those other smaller provisions, R&D, development, was very helpful. Those are all set to expire here pretty soon. So about a month after IBIE. So all the bakers out there.
Other questions? Damien has a loud voice. He could.
Just wondering, from your perspective, you have certainly a higher view perspective than the rest of us. The supply, how did the global trade restrictions from the last administration affect supply chain? And if that gets relieved, are we in a better spot 6-9 months from now than where we are today?
That's a great question, and Brad may have his own thoughts on this, but it goes without saying that the previous administration had to use tariffs as a blunt instrument, particularly around stainless steel and aluminum. And what happened is, of course, other countries aren't going to sit by and take it lying down. So then there were retaliatory tariffs, which tended to hit the food industry hard. They're unwinding that. Something near and dear to my heart, they just announced they eliminated the tariff on Scotch whiskey. So they're...
Feel better.
And it's a 25% tariff, and so, but in all seriousness, I do think, they're very much going to wind these down. Damien, I just don't know how long that's going to take.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the economy, to me, the world economy is a big ship, and it takes a while to move it. We had COVID and kind of everything shut down, and then everything's starting to ramp back up, and demand went up. We're still not where we were, so it takes a while, and I think it's going to take definitely through the rest of this year before we kind of get our legs underneath. And then, what happens with variants and what happens with everything else. But I think it's going to take some time.
Other questions?
Hard to see.
It is a little hard to see.
That might be it.
So thank you very much. You're welcome. We really enjoy having ABA leadership at our meeting. It's essential. We have such a great relationship and are working on so many things together. So we really appreciate Brad spending the time and coming, and of course Rob. So